Hey everyone. Hey, I'm excited. Can you tell? I'm a couple cups of coffee in. But today is the traditional month of Black History Month, and I'm kicking off the month with a familiar face. My brother from the same mother, but a coach, speaker, trainer extraordinaire in his own right. I have with me today, this February 1st, Mr. Kenston Henderson Sr. What's going on, brother?
Not much, man. How are you feeling?
Hey, everything is copacetic on my end. I cannot complain. If I was doing any better, it'd probably be criminal. But that's another topic, another day. But today is all about highlighting, spotlighting you, and what you're doing in the world and how you're impacting those that you serve. But before we get into the topic of today, which is winning conversations and how to have them, particularly as it pertains to race, because this is one of those months where everybody goes get speakers. And if you don't have one already, you're behind the power curve and expect to pay premium at this point. But before we get into that, tell people a little bit about yourself, what you do, how you do, and then we'll get into it.
Okay, awesome. So I am a speaker, trainer, coach, group coach, as Lawrence already specified. My background has been in HR for the last 17 and a half years, and I've been doing everything from HRIS to benefits, to recruitment, to training and development. But my sweet spot, my purpose is all around igniting, inspiring, empower people through training and motivational speaking, and really just helping leaders have amazing winning conversations. And so our parents were passionate about teaching and preaching, and it's like we finally woke up and was like, you know what, that just makes great sense. And so it's easy to embrace now that I am, I knew what I was put on this earth to do. And so, there's many mountains that we can tap into with our various skill sets and abilities, but it's this one that says, that helps me come alive every day, that, I wake up and when I go into organizations and, equip them. So.
No, I love the inspiring and equipping. Both of us are students, and I like to tell people we drink our Kool-Aid first as it pertains to having difficult conversations, because that's a name for it. But when it comes to the mindset shift of having a winning conversation, what was kind of the thing that made this message make sense for you?
Like it's just that, it's the mindset. Like everything starts with the mind. Like you're battling your own mind, and so it just makes sense with when I phrased it, winning conversations. Like you when you see the word winning come across your mind, what are you thinking? Like it's positive, it's energetic. It's like, yeah, I'm actually doing this, and it excites people. It excites leaders that I speak with, that it's like, oh, crucial conversations, how to deal with difficult people. But winning says, oh, it's on. Like I got to jump into this, like with everything I have. And so, that's where, again, it's just a different frame, a mindset adjustment, that if we make it leaders, then we can really go into this thing courageous and confident. Like we don't have to go in and like, I hate having these conversations. It's I don't like conflict. No, it's a natural part of the job, right? And so if you're a leader, if you're a manager, you got to say, all right, look, it's showtime. Let's have a winning conversation. So yeah.
And I find that hilarious, man, because me and you talk about words and how they land with people, particularly as pertaining to being a speaker and being mindful of word usage and the art and science behind the emotion that some people attach to certain conversations, particularly in today's heightened sensitivity world that we live in. And I love the fact that the thoughtfulness, right, of understanding the deep emotions that can come up for people as it pertains to talking about race. But what are the things that you do, particularly as a trainer? Because let's be honest, right? People are like, oh, we want to make sure you're uncomfortable and you're comfortable being uncomfortable. But let's be real. Like, how many of us are signing up? Like, I think we max out at about one uncomfortable conversation a day. And if that uncomfortable conversation slot was taken up at home, I'm tapped out. I don't want to have another uncomfortable conversation. Even if you call it winning, we talking about race. Yeah. And what is it about this conversation about race that causes the hairs to stand up on the back of people's necks?
I mean, you said it. It's uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable for people who do not have these conversations. It's easy for you and me to talk about this all day, all night. But for a person who has not, taken the time to intentionally have a conversation, it's like anything new that we come in to interact with in our lives, from a job promotion to, just doing something new, period. There's some type of level of anxiety that comes up. And so, but it's for us to be curious in the matter, right? We're creatures of comfort, and we don't like really things to change or to fluctuate differently, because if it does, it just throws us off, our mood off, our mindset off, just everything is thrown off. And so being curious, I call it the art of curiosity, is being in a place where you're able to ask questions about what's taking place. In this case of the topic of race, right? How can we be curious about having this conversation about race? What can you do? What questions can we ask about it? And so that really helps the conversation go along the way. And this is a perfect month to talk about things. And if we can take the time to be curious in these moments, it's gonna work out for you good.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that posture, right? Because again, at the end of the day, we know that communication, whether it's virtually or in person with people, a lot can be said without words. And I believe a lot of times the emotion of a conversation can be felt through a screen. I've experienced it as doing 100% of my coaching virtually. You can feel the emotions of people, and the reframe of, hey, this is not a confrontational conversation, but this is a curious conversation. Like I always talk about, and me and you've discussed this, about deweaponizing these conversations, because when people, because a lot of times it's black and white. Let's go ahead and throw it out there. It's black and white. And when people in the U.S., they haven't practiced there. And for you, now here's the funny thing. You just made a generalization about me and you being okay with having this type of conversation. I'm gonna be honest with you. I wasn't good at it because I was always one of those people that tried to push it to the back. Like, why do we have to talk about that? Like, why is that still a thing? And I would have a visceral reaction to having to talk about race. And so for a lot of us, like, there's a misnomer, like, so don't just think this is a for white people conversation. This is for all people conversation, because it's just not something that was able to be discussed. Like, race was added to religion in the workplace, and you just don't talk about those things there. And then it was kind of, well, why are we talking about this now? Did something happen? And it was always associated with something so negative that when we had to, everybody was always whispering of who got called something bad.
Yeah, who did what?
As a reason why, or a knee-jerk reaction to something that the organization was needing to engage with. But when you say, is this a reactionary type of thing, or is this actually being proactive in a organization's approach to how to build community?
Yeah, so just going back quickly, we ain't gonna stay there, but the George Floyd thing, it caused organizations to react. All right, what we got to do? What we got to do? What we got to do? We need to put this in, and we need to do this, do this, do this, do this. All that's well and good, but what's happening right now in your organization? And what happens, all these years, things get swept under the rug. Okay, we react, and it gets swept under the rug. However, like benefits, like I always equate it to your benefits plan at your organization, right? Every benefits professional will say, you know what, go to your preventative care throughout the year. If you go to your preventative care, it can prevent you from having an emergency type of reaction. Now you got to have a surgery. Now you got to do this. You got to get this done because it's an emergency. Well, if you add curious conversations about race and about inclusivity and diversity into your preventative care training plan, then you're less likely to have knee-jerk reactions and having full-fledged emergencies and having to deal with lawsuits and discrimination things. You won't have to deal with those. But the more we can get comfortable at having these necessary conversations, it's going to make your world better.
Oh man, you're making it sound too easy, Kenston. You're making it sound way too fundamentally easy because you've taken away the buts and the ands and but it's different here. And I love that that Jorge put in the comments about culture is important and sometimes the focus is off. And again, it's one of those things we always go back to putting the posters into practice.
Yeah.
I don't care how small the organization is. You got a mission, vision, and a value statement. And if that actually isn't an actionable document, if those aren't actionable documents, it's going to be off constantly over and over again. And particularly if you don't check in on those culture documents that are saying this is who we are, even when it's tough. And so when you have that conversation, Kenston, where does it start? Like we're saying organizations, but where does it start?
No, I mean, it just starts, the question is how serious are you about this work? And like you said, alluded to Jorge saying, it's really as far as culture. You're like, how effective do you want this to be in your organization? And if you want it to be truly effective and to be a part of your preventative care plan, then you're going to add some things, some language to your policies, to your processes, to make sure it stays in the front view and not the back view, so to speak. And so and really digging deep and making sure across the board the leadership is on board, right? And do you care about your leadership being on board with your value statement, your mission statement, right? Because if you do care about this work being a part of your value and your mission statement, then you're going to make sure that all the leaders have that same understanding, and then the people below them making sure they have that understanding as well too. So that way it's a part of even your evaluations. It's a part of your yearly reviews of how have you show that you're implementing these pieces of your mission statement. So
Kenston, stop cussing at people. Stop cussing at people saying this stuff needs to be a performance measure.
It does.
You stop it, Kenston.
It does.
Because here's the argument. Oh, this is just part of humanity. Well, yeah, you're right. It should be if humanity played by the rules. But and I love Lakeisha's comment about there are individuals who don't understand why this conversation is important, and they're the ones that are mostly triggered by these conversations. The ones that say, I don't understand why this is a thing. Right. And a lot of times, where do those kind of comments come from?
Bubbles of privilege.
Say it one more time for the people in the back.
Bubbles of privilege. People are in their own bubbles. They never try to seek out or look outside their bubble. And if they're not affected by anything that's taking place, they have a choice to make. Either they choose to do their own understanding, digging, or they stay comfortable. There's that comfort because in my comfort, as long as it's not touching me, my family members, my friends, I'm good. You know?
Yeah, yeah, it is funny, and I love your and I'm just typing in but hashtag bubble of privilege. So make that one go viral. It's funny
That's the
how
next TEDx. That's the next TEDx.
right. That's a part of the TEDx, right? But those are I love that bubble of privilege because privilege I like it liken it to where the brain also goes. And you talk about words and words matter and the emotions evoked by certain word usages and different things like that. But when you say bubbles of privilege, help take away the ambiguity for people or wherever their brains are trying to allow them to go. Which level of privilege are you talking about?
I mean, just the level of, again, well, we can talk about the humanity privilege. We can talk about, man or, gender privilege. We can talk about, again, I mean, I guess as simple as forms for me is that the privilege of, because I'm able to do what I need to do, provide for the people I need to provide for, and again, nothing's being affected. It doesn't affect me. So why should anybody else care about it? And that's not good as a privilege, right? My son has the privilege of, having a father in a home who cares for him and takes care of him. But I don't want him to say, that he doesn't care about his other friends who don't necessarily have fathers in their lives or strong male influences in their lives. I want him to care more about them and how can he get them in front of his dad through, a game changer series, right? To impact them.
Yeah, and it's amazing, particularly as we talk about, the conversation about one nation under God, right? We all did the Pledge of Allegiance as children coming up in grade school, and my buddy Kevin Duffer is in the building. It's the truths that come from these lived realities, not these perceived realities. And I really believe that is something that, if not acknowledged, if not explicitly discussed, things can be lost in translation. And we can allow ourselves, as been put in the comments already, we can allow ourselves to be complicit in our acknowledgement or lack thereof of these conversations needing to happen organizationally. Because to say to a young person of color, Black, Indigenous, or person of color, that, oh, it's not that bad, when you don't identify with anybody in that community, is to be dismissive, right? Yeah. Regardless of the microaggressions and all the different things like that, it's not micro, it's just aggressive. It's dismissive. It's compartmentalizing because you haven't had that experience, that you're comparing your life to theirs. And in and of itself, you're trying to explain away somebody else's experience, which we know that to be void of respect. And so if we're talking about values and culture or in the foundation of what we all are, it has to start with, like you just said, Kenston, the respect of humanity in and of itself. And so when you have these conversations, right, because we would all like to think, and leaders would like to think that they're ready to have these conversations. What are some of the things that you're encountering as you're having these discovery sessions about going in the direction of doing this type of preventative maintenance training?
Yeah, so there's a method that I use called REM, and so REM it means respect, empathy, and maturity, and it's truly used as a method, but as a gauge as well. Is how ready is your organization to receive these types of conversations? How ready are they to talk about inclusion and diversity? How well are they, willingly are they ready to talk about implicit bias? All the different topics that we cover, privilege. Are they ready? But the first question is to the leader is, are you ready for these necessary conversations to take place? And so the REM is just respect, empathy, maturity. And are you willing to show that respect? Are you willing to be there and hold that space, and be able to empathize as the material is coming forth? Are you able to be mature about it? Because there's a lot of, these conversations can go wrong fast, right? We know these conversations could go wrong fast, but as facilitators, trainers, and speakers, it's how you set the bar. I call it like the recipe. And if you're following a recipe, you gotta follow the recipe, or the chances are something's not gonna taste right. Something is not gonna go right. And so for all conversations, especially talking about race or any considered difficult conversation, respect, empathy, maturity have to be the ingredients put inside the race conversation, or it's just not going to go well. Like, it's going to be pandemonium, right? When I talk to, a couple groups, veterans, I talk to a white group of veterans, a black group of veterans. Now, if we didn't have the conversation before, they couldn't have got together. And I said, all right, let's talk about this Colin Kaepernick thing. It had just blew right on up. But because the conversations happens, simultaneously, separately, then they understood that in order for us to have this conversation together, these ingredients have to be involved. And then the conversation was successful, right? But we got to remember, everybody's not ready for the conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's almost, and if I'm hearing you the right way, what's really coming up is that RIM is the acronym, but you're almost questioning, or you have a line of questioning that you actually figure out which actual letter in the acronym organizations need to start with.
Yeah.
before you get rolling, right? Yeah. How many of them, just give me a percentage, don't dime anybody out. How many of them are at, because I'm thinking it's a high percentage. What's the percentage on how many of them have to start with the M, the maturity?
Listen, we talking about grown adult organizations. It's real high.
Oh my God.
It's real high. Like, at least, like, it. Let me tell you this: the great thing has, in the last several months, it's tilted a little bit. Yeah. But there's still a high, I would say a high 80-85%.
Man. And here let's put some context around that 85%, right? At the end of the day, we got taught, most of us got taught, because I haven't seen it done a lot in schools and things now, where soft skill development is actually a thing that needs to happen throughout education. But I'm seeing it less and less early ages of implementation of the golden rule, because there's so much testing, so it's taking away from the actual relational development of children. So by the time they graduate from high school, they're so engulfed with, I have to perform, that when they spaz out or have an outburst at work, it's like, why are you reacting like that? That's so unprofessional. To assume that skill sets were developed early on to have these types of interactions would to be to your own detriment as organizations. And I really believe the bridge is, it got mentioned earlier, I always come back to the values, and respect, empathy, and maturity as a value set is, I believe, where a lot of organizations just need to really peel back the onion and start there, right? Yeah. What is it? And then not make it aspirational, but actually attach associated actions in accordance with the organization, that they actually have real-time examples. And I love with that respect, that empathy. Tell people about empathy, because up until a couple years ago, I didn't even know how to spell empathy. I'm just going to go ahead and throw that out there. I didn't even know how to spell it. Nor did I know how to use it. So help people out with that empathy, because empathy is turning into the leadership, coaching. Empathy is turning into that new T-shirt buzzword.
Yeah. So, empathy is really sharing space, being able to not be quick to judge or to to go down, tell somebody about your thoughts and your experience, but being able to share that space with someone else, being able to say, you know what, I have no clue of what you are experiencing or what you have experiencing or what you have experienced, but I truly want to know what you have experienced. You know, it's just like, again, we're in Black History Month, is, you know, what harm would it do to approach a colleague of diverse descent and a Black colleague and ask them, you know, what has your experience been in America? I just want to talk. I want to know. I truly want to know, not because you feel pity, sympathy, but this is empathy, and really choose to listen, to understand. That's, you know, those words called active listening or empathetic listening, but really truly value the other person that is speaking. And that's what I mean by, you know, empathy. And again, it's sharing that space. Yes, you do have to sometimes be intentional with it, right? Because if you're someone who has not reached outside their bubble, then you have to intentionally do it. You say, you know what, I got to do this. Let me go talk to such and such. Like, I don't know what she could be going through right now, but I feel something. I sense something. I seen she's been a little uptight, or he's been a little uptight, snapping off a little bit these past several months. Looks very stressed. Look, you could identify him real quick and say, you know what? Hey, my brother, man, sister, you know, how can I be here for you?
Yeah. And it's, and I love that you went there, right? As it pertains to who takes the first step, because I believe in a lot of times in these conversations, as I began to study myself, there is a ton of material to educate yourselves about conversations about race, the systemic issues around not only in the United States, but around the world, and how that's actually informed the way communities of people have lived their lives. And again, as it pertains to mental health aspects of not having this conversation, and the toil and the heaviness that it takes when people don't feel like there's an outlet to even openly have these conversations with under the umbrella of respect, empathy, and maturity. And so I want to thank you for bringing this to the forefront, and something that you talked about in your TEDx, which I loved seeing you roll that out. And for anybody, I'm putting it that's watching this live, I'm putting it in the chat right now across social media. But when you think about organizations and just leaving people with one thing today, because we always talk about where do you start, right? This conversation is so massive. They can go after 100 books today and still not see the rest of the iceberg as it pertains to winning conversations, particularly in a race conversation. Where do people start, Kenston? What's a generalization or a place that you generally help people start?
Yeah, so definitely, there's a lot of books, there's a lot of movies, there's a lot of YouTubes, there's a lot of TEDx's, right? And so I would say get in touch with somebody that is an advocate or an expert, that is a speaker like yourself, Lawrence. Get in touch with Lawrence, Henderson, like to start the conversation. Get in touch with myself. Let's start there, and then we can connect you with so many different resources, right? And that's all it takes. A consultant, somebody who's been in this space, but can really you got to check them out, make sure they're official, right? We didn't just start this yesterday, right? We got some years and experiences and books and everything to back it up. So get in touch with us. I have a Winning Conversations workbook that that I'm putting out there for organizations to have small group talks, for churches, for anybody who wants to have put together a small group. You can start having these conversations, and it'll work take you through a process of 4 to 6 weeks, however long you want to make it, but you'll come out having winning conversations after it. So,
well, I just want to say thank you so much, my brother, for coming to kick this off with me this month of February. Y'all, it's February. For the first time, it didn't feel like January had 19 weeks. And I'm so excited about it. Got some really great things happening in the Hot Takes community, but also some great partnerships going to happen in 2021. So everyone continue to stay locked in, continue to remain vigilant as pertains to your health and dealing with this pandemic we're still in. But be good to each other. Be good to each other. And not just during a cultural awareness month. Be good to each other every single day that we're allowed this opportunity to have breath in our lungs. And so follow Kenston, connect with Kenston across social media. Kenston, tell them how to find you.
So LinkedIn, Kenston LWL, Facebook, Live with Life, Instagram, Live with Life, TikTok, Live with Life, and that's LYFE. So not LIFE, but LYFE. And let's connect and let's keep making this truly a united States of America.
Love it, love it, love it. Well, Kenston, I appreciate you for your time, your effort, and we'll be talking soon. So until next time, folks, continue to be hot in every conversation that you have. That is being humble, open, and transparent. Have a great one, everyone.
See ya.